Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars, topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Pauline, and we have a lot to talk about in regards to basketball in general. This episode is mostly going to be kind of like a recap since our last Olympic episode, and we are moving into the medal rounds now for both men's and women's basketball, and both of our teams have been doing quite well, and as expected, we have been discussing these last few weeks how both teams were picked to be the favorites, and how on our women's team has continually been dominating on the international front, especially in the Olympics, and that the way that they were looking during group play was that the women's team would be breaking some records as far as points per game and just dominating in that. And our men's team was looking like they would be not really have, based upon our exhibition games that they've had and based upon group play, well, the first two games of group play, it looked like our men's team would not really have any competition in this Olympics as well. There was also some disappointment in the way that Spain was playing in these first couple of rounds of group play. And again, I did luckily kind of make a pretty good prediction. I know that I'm terrible at predictions, but I gave you guys in our last Olympic episode, I believe it was episode 11, I did kind of where I discussed the matchup with Australia and the United States. And I was kind of giving a quick preview and discussing how I saw that matchup, and it kind of played into the way that I was thinking, that it would be a really good competitive game and that the US would, of course, break off away with a win with that game, but that it would be a nice competition and some friendly basketball to see and finally give us a game. And so this episode is going to basically just recap what has happened thus far and looking into what's going to be happening as both our men's and women's national teams look forward into Olympic play in Rio. So we're going to take it to a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to just dive right into our men's team basketball. And also, Sue Bird has, there's some shakiness with Sue Bird and her knee. So I wanted to talk about that and how that's going to affect our women's national team. So keep it locked right here. You're listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Pauline. You're listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. And right before we took that quick break, I had mentioned that Sue Bird is kind of iffy right now as far as playing and moving forward with the Olympics. And Sue Bird, she is another one of those players who has throughout the last few years been a fixture in the WNBA, and she, both in international play and in league play, has been a dominating force on the backcourt. And she has always been, the name Sue Bird has always come up when discussing great players in the WNBA. She also has multiple medals with the women's Olympic team. And in this past game, the women's team just in the quarterfinals defeated Japan. And that was another kind of not close game, but a game that was very unexpected for our women's national team, because our women's national team, as we have been discussing and throughout the entire Olympics, it's been discussed how great our women's national team is and how well that they've been since 1992. And I know that I always bring that up, but it's just amazing to me how little recognition that they get when they're dominating in their sport and dominating in their field. But anyway, so they just had their quarterfinal in the medal round. So the medal round now, basically, we had group play already. So there's a group play that goes on, and we start. Okay, so let me backtrack. So for the Olympics, we have the exhibition games that take place first, and then we have group play and things like that. And then we go into the medal round. So the top 8 teams get to, it's kind of like the Elite 8 when it comes to NCAA tournament. So they get to play, and it's kind of like an even playing field. You go in with a record, but this is when it really counts. And so it kind of just picks your seeding, which is good to do well in group play for your seeding, because that depends on who you're going to play against. But, when it comes to this elimination, 1 game elimination round, this is when it all counts. And this is when you have to give it your all. And one off game really could cost you going further into the round and competing for that gold medal. So it was the quarterfinals for the women's national team, and they played against Japan, and they did end up winning 110-64. So that again was another big margin for the women's national team in winning. And they pretty much, when you look at a score like that, you would think that they were winning the entire game, but that's not the case. So they were only up by 2 in late into the second, going into the halftime, and so it was actually kind of like a close game, especially in the first half. And so coach was saying that during the second half, during that halftime, he was not happy, and they were allowing some shots for Japan to put up some shots that were uncontested. They're shooting 3-pointers and looking like they're just too comfortable, especially on offense. They were not afraid to shoot a lot of crazy kind of looking 3-point shots. They weren't feeling any pressure. Japan wasn't. So they really had to work on that coming back in for the second half. And of course, the women's national team, like I said, they're a bunch of veterans in the WNBA, and so the few rookies that we have are not rookies to the professional level, so they know what it takes to come out and to win these games and what they need to do to turn things around. And so of course that they did, and that was great. Diana Taurasi and Maya Moore each had 19 apiece, so our veterans were able to step it up and really lead through example. But the thing is one disappointing thing about this game was that Sue Bird actually had to leave the game early due to her knee. She had to sit out, and at first they were kind of saying it was just a precaution because we want her to still be able to play and be healthy as the games go on and we continue into this tournament. And so that was fine, but then it was also announced that she would have to get it looked at the next day, and that it was maybe perhaps a little bit more than just her needing to sit it out and rest it. So I'm really interested to see what's going to be happening with that and whether or not she'll be able to still compete for these next few games, and if she's done for the Olympics, because as I mentioned before in a previous episode, the WNBA season is not over. They're kind of on a hiatus. They're paused right now for the Olympic Games, but this is actually women's basketball time. So this is their season. And so I'm sure that kind of plays into effect on whether or not she's going to continue, depending on how, the severity of what's going on with her knee right now, because there's not only just the Olympics that we're having to consider, but also regular league play when the women's national team returns to the U.S. So it's going to be really interesting to see how what they decide to do with Sue Bird, because she is trying again. This could be one of, if not the last Olympics for someone like her as well. So it'd be kind of nice to see if she can play and if she can continue and help the women's team win gold again. So we're just hoping that it's not anything too serious and that it's nothing that some, rest can't fix before their next game. So that'll be really good. I'm hoping to see that. But we're going to cut it to a quick break. And when we come back, we have to discuss what's going on with Team USA, our men's team, and what's going on with them, because they were also picked to be the favorites, but for some reason have had kind of like a weird few games. They are still 5-0 at the end of group play leading into our medal round for men's play, but it's kind of been kind of weird. So when we come back, we're going to discuss that, and you are listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. We will be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Pauline, and right before the break, we were discussing how our men's national team is doing, and I kind of want to discuss what's been going on with them. So the men's national team was picked to be the favorites, number one, to win gold again, and they are so far so good as far as wins are concerned. But then in my last Olympic episode 11, I was talking about how, for example, DeMarcus Cousins fouled out in the first 9 minutes. And then you have Klay Thompson at that time, who was not shooting well at all. And I kind of touched on how when you're playing regular league play, two guys that you are depending on to be dominant forces on each end of the court, when they don't produce that, that's a problem. But then we were saying, however, with the Olympic national team, it's okay because our team is so much better than all the other teams, and that our bench is so deep, and that we have a lot of guys that we can throw in and rotate. And it's okay if you kind of have like an off night, because we have another all-star that we can throw in that can produce, and we can truly dominate against these teams. So we kind of talked about that, but it's funny because when Team USA men's basketball is dominating games, we kind of like gloss over their mistakes, and we gloss over some things that we wouldn't ever gloss over in regular league play or in the playoffs. But then because right now, we gloss over it. But then the second they start kind of, falling off a little bit, all of a sudden, everybody has something to say. All of a sudden, everyone is getting on our men's national team and talking about how terrible that they're doing and all these kinks that they need to work out going into medal play, which is true. There are a few kinks that they do have to work on now that it's going into the elimination round. But I just think it's hilarious how when they're making these mistakes prior, we just kind of like excuse it and we're like, oh, it's fine because we got this and we have other all-stars that we can throw in and it's okay to have an off night. Not that big of a deal, DeMarcus fouling out in 9 minutes, we can work with that. Not a problem. But then the second we start kind of like drifting off a little bit, now all of a sudden everybody's worried about why our defense is so bad and why we're not putting up a lot of points and why we're allowing other teams to have so many points. So just kind of like a recap of the last 3 games of group play for our men's national team. So they beat, last time we spoke, they were getting ready to face off against Australia, and they beat Australia by 10 after having a really good, they closed it out in the 4th. They really did. And so that was a really good game. And Australia, like I said, was coming out ready. And I think Australia is one team that, some people were, knowing weren't going to do poorly, but they've really come out and pressing fans, and they've really come out, swinging. They're coming out a lot harder than I think some people expected. And so in a way, I was kind of glad for Australia to give us some competition, and to give us a game and give us a really good game. But then, so they beat Australia by 10. Then they played Serbia and only won by 3. And everybody was freaking out because Serbia wasn't supposed to be in that game. We were not supposed to lose, we were supposed to dominate Serbia. We weren't supposed to barely get through, by a few points. And then we face off against France. So France was game 5 for us in group play, and we barely beat them as well. So that was 100-97. And so that was a really close game and kind of made Team USA really look at themselves and see what is going on, what was going not quite right for them and why these games were so close. And now France is a team that is not bad. They're not a bad international team. And France and Spain were actually picked to be great teams during this play, and that they are great international teams. And it was kind of like, US at number 1 and then Spain and France at a really close 2 and 3. And people were liking them. People are liking Argentina. But, France wasn't projected to be a bad team, and France was projected to do very well in the Olympics. And so it's not a surprise that they're giving the U.S. some competition and that they're competing with the U.S. and kind of like making us work for it. And so I just thought it was really funny how these last few weeks people have just been all on Team USA and discussing how, which in a way is kind of true. It may be valid that they are they were starting to slack off a little bit perhaps and allowing some of those mistakes to really show through and things like that. But at the end of the day, they got the 5 wins. And now that it's the elimination round, and now that everybody's kind of 0-0 as far as rankings are concerned, and you got to actually play now. And that's actually going to start on Wednesday. So that the quarterfinals for men's is going to start Wednesday, and the U.S. team is set to start off against Argentina. Now, Argentina, we beat them in the exhibition round, remember? So that was when they were still playing here in the U.S. for that exhibition game, about a month ago. They defeated Argentina, and Argentina has been kind of, we discussed them in episode 11 as well, as doing pretty good for a group that has a little bit of older players on the team. Like, their leadership and their years are actually working really well in their favor. And Argentina has been, when we saw them a month ago in exhibition play to now, they are evolving and they're changing and they're meshing a lot better. So I'm really excited to see this USA game and Argentina game, because it's almost like they may have gotten to a good level, and that Team USA is now going to have to really work for it, because the team that they faced in Argentina a month ago is not the team that they're going to face now in this quarterfinal round. Argentina has upped their game. They've meshed better. They're doing well. They have a couple games now underneath their belt, so that they've able to kind of like get into a really good flow with one another. And so Team USA is not... I really don't think that they can sleep on Argentina when it comes to this quarterfinal round. Like, I think that they need to come with their A game. And I know that as athletes, they do come with their A game, but they have to forget that 5-0 right now, that they need to look at it as this is an elimination game. And that if they don't produce, and if not everyone is on their A game, if Clay is not hitting shots that we need him to hit, if we're not playing defense the way that we need to be playing defense and stopping some of that penetration into the key, then it's going to be a ball game, and it's going to be interesting to see how Team USA does. And so I think, but then of course, because I'm always going to be pro Team USA, I think that they will not get kicked out of this round. And I think that that's actually that's good, of course, and we want them to win, but I think it is going to be another good fought out game, which is going to be a lot of fun to watch, because again, blowouts are great when your team is winning, but also having a game that you can watch and enjoy is also a lot of fun. And so I'm really hoping that this game against Argentina is a good game, but that we do pull it out. And also in that quarterfinal round is Spain and France. They are going to be going head to head, and whoever wins, Team USA or Argentina, the winner of our game, which most likely will be Team USA, is going to go up against Spain and France. And it's really exciting to see these two matchups, because there's a lot of history between these four teams. And so when we come back from this quick break, I just want to dive into a little bit of that history in between these four teams and what it looks like and what it may look like after this quarterfinal round with the men's international play. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, I'm going to just jump right into that so that we can discuss that a little bit more.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. I'm Pauline, and this is, we're kind of getting ready to wrap up the episode, and right before the break, we were discussing our Team USA men's quarterfinal round against Argentina. And now Argentina has always been kind of like our really good competition in international play. They've always been a really great international team, as well as Spain and France. Now, last episode 11, my last Olympic episode, I should say, I discussed how Argentina and Spain were both kind of looking a little bit older, like the veterans are, this is going to be the last Olympics for a lot of these guys that are veteran Olympians on each one of these national teams, but that Argentina was looking a little bit better than Spain was as far as group play was concerned at that time. And so Spain is going to be matched up against France in the quarterfinal round. Now, France has, like I said, they only lost to Team USA by 3, and France is a very, very great international team. So that's going to be a really good matchup, Spain and France. And it actually works in Team USA's favor that they are going to be headed off against one another in the quarterfinal round, because that helps us. That helps us a lot, because those are two teams that we would again have to definitely bring our A game against, but that are not going to go down without a fight. So it's nice that if things go according to plan and USA wins the quarterfinal and wins the semifinal, that they won't have to go against both Spain during one of those rounds and then France during one of those rounds and have to defeat both of them. And so it's going to be nice to see who's going to, help out Team USA for that matchup, because Spain or France is going to give us a good game. And so I kind of want it to be France who pulls out against Spain, which would be really nice to see a matchup of Team USA and France again, to kind of it'll just be one round in between. And I think that because we have already played them once, we can review that film, we can get back into it, we can see where our gaps and where our holes were against France, and then kind of like come out stronger. And of course, yes, that's exactly what France is going to be doing if the matchup were to be USA and France again, and they are going to come just as hard and just as strong. But like I said, there's these little tiny flaws and there's these little mistakes that Team USA has been making that are just because they are getting a little bit relaxed and getting a little bit, too confident. So they're not mistakes that are happening because our guys are not of high caliber and our guys are falling under pressure and our guys are not being able to, amount to our expectations. They're just small mistakes. They're mistakes that do not need to be made. There are mistakes like that can definitely be addressed, and they know it. And so it's nice because Team USA, like our guys know it and they see where they're slacking. They see where they're kind of getting a little bit laxed in it, and they know. And when you listen to any of their post-game interviews or any of these interviews that they've been having throughout the Olympics, they recognize that although they have been winning, they could be doing much more, and that they could be producing a lot better than what they are doing. And it just so happens that they are still able to win because this is the standard of basketball at Team USA. So it's going to be really nice. I'm hoping that we see a France and Team USA matchup so that we can get like a rematch game with that, and that they can cruise on through with that one and hopefully give us another good game. Like I'm hoping that these few games in elimination round are going to be a lot of fun and kind of like close, but of course with Team USA pulling out. And now Carmello, he is our veteran on the team as far as the Olympics are concerned. I think that Carmello does great in international play. And I have also kind of touched on this before in a previous episode when I kind of like discussed like super teams after the Kevin Durant trade. And I kind of discussed how there are some all-stars, some superstars, some MVPs, some Hall of Famers even, who don't have rings. And there are some guys that are okay with that. And then there's some guys that are not okay with that. And there's some guys that clearly, guys such as Kevin Durant, even like LeBron is a guy that, kind of hops from teams to try to chase championships as well, to create these like super teams because they want to do what they feel is best for their career wise and for their goals and for their careers based upon what those goals may be. And then we also kind of discussed how there's some players that are okay with never winning a ring as long as they have other goals. They just want to be great players. There's someone in our office who says that they are okay with being B+ players, and that Carmelo's kind of like a B+, like he has a B+ attitude about things. So what I'm trying to say is basically that Carmello, unsurprisingly, has officially said in an interview, because I think people kind of knew this about him, and kind of he just strikes me, at least, as a guy like this. He's okay without winning a ring. And he said this now, like, it's, I believe it was just last week in an interview about the Olympics and things like that. He's happy with his career. He thinks that and especially if he's going to go on, and if Team USA in Rio wins gold, this is going to be his third Olympic gold medal. And he is fine with that. He feels that he had a phenomenal high school career, a phenomenal college career, and that his NBA career even has been great, and that his international career is great. And he says that if he were to retire and never have a ring, as far as in the NBA not having a championship ring, that he's okay with that. And so I don't know how that makes you guys feel. I don't know how that makes me feel. It kind of makes me feel like, oh yeah, I already knew, and there are guys that are okay with that. And I don't know how that makes you feel as like a franchise that devotes everything into a player. Because I'm sure if a guy like LeBron were to say, oh, I don't care if I never win a ring, I don't know if fans are okay with that. I don't know if organizations are okay with that. So does that mean that you're not going to give your whole effort? Are we not going to try to build something because you're okay with retiring without a ring? I don't know. It just kind of, I know that some guys feel this way and feel that just as long as they're getting paid and having, able to have a job where they're playing a sport that they love, that they're okay with that. But I don't know. The competitive side of me just feels like there's always that you want a ring, that's the ultimate goal in playing the sport. And so I don't know, it didn't really throw me off because it's Carmello saying this and it's kind of expected from him, but he has officially said it, that he is okay with just being a medalist and having all his other accolades, and that getting a ring is not high on his priority list. And it's not really, I don't know, is it not on his to-do list at all because he's just satisfied? I don't know. Carmello, I think, is a phenomenal player, and he's a great player, and especially during international play. And lately he, in this Rio Olympics, has really stepped up and taken that torch of being the veteran player for the Olympic team when it comes to Olympic play. And that's great. But I don't know. Carmello, I mean, like I said, it didn't surprise me. I'm just surprised that he has said it before retiring, because as a fan, if I were a fan and if that was my team, I'd be like, great, so we're just not gonna get a ring because he's okay with that, or what? I don't know. That's just kind of how I was looking at that. But we're gonna wrap it up right there. Carmello is gonna be my last point for this episode. You are listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. You can listen on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud. You can even listen to us on Stitcher. We have our network website, and that's GSMCpodcast.com. I'm on Twitter at GSMC_basketball. And I kind of, if you guys, I kind of want to know how you guys feel about Carmello saying this. Like, I don't think it's a surprise for many that he's not interested. Well, it's not high on his priority list to get a ring because he's content with what he's done, which rightfully so. He has accomplished a lot. He's had a very, very good, even great career, both through all the levels that he has played at. And he's very well respected around the league. He's respected with other players. I would even go to say that he's respected with a lot of fans. There's not really much negative things you can say about Carmello, which is nice and which is great. But, I don't know how you guys feel about that. So you can hit me up on Twitter at GSMC_basketball, because I kind of want to know. I want to know how you guys feel about this. But this is going to do it for this episode. I'm your host, Pauline, and it's been fun. Hopefully next time on our next week's episode, we are going to be discussing how great Team USA has been doing in the medal round and just how fun it was that we just beat everyone. So have a good week, and we'll talk to you later.